Zixala pressed her pale blue fingers against the cool metal wall of the diplomatic station. Her large purple eyes watched the viewing screen with growing worry. The humans had just sent another data package about their species. She was supposed to study it and write a report for the Velthari High Council. The young alien woman took a deep breath. Her people had chosen her for this job because she was smart. She had studied many alien species before. But humans were different. They were confusing in ways she had never seen. Zixala walked to her desk and opened the human files. The first document was about human culture. She read slowly, trying to understand each word. Her translation device helped, but some phrases still seemed strange. The humans called their romantic meetings dates. During these dates, they would go to places called restaurants. Zixala knew what restaurants were. They were places where beings ate food. This seemed normal enough, but then she found something that made her stomach feel sick. In the human files, she read about something called eating out. The context seemed romantic. Males would eat out their female partners. Zixala read the sentence 3 times. Her hands started to shake. She opened more files. There were phrases about males going down on females. There were mentions of taste and appetite in romantic situations. One file even talked about how human males would devour their partners during intimate moments. Zixala stood up so fast that her chair fell backward. Her species, the Velthari, had very different mating habits. When Velthari males wanted to mate, they produced sweet nectar from special glands. The females would drink this nectar in a careful ceremony. It was gentle and beautiful, but humans seemed to eat their females during mating. She grabbed her communication device and called her supervisor, Elder Morthak. The old alien's face appeared on the screen. His wrinkled features showed concern when he saw Zixala's frightened expression. "What troubles you, young one?" Elder Morthak asked. "The humans," Zixala said quickly. "I think they are cannibals. The males eat the females during mating." Elder Morthak's 4 eyes widened. "Are you certain?" Zixala sent him the files she had been reading. She watched his face grow pale as he read the same phrases that had scared her. "This is very serious," Elder Morthak said after a long moment. "If this is true, we cannot form an alliance with such creatures. Continue your research. We need more proof before we act." The screen went dark. Zixala sat back down and continued reading. The more she learned, the more frightened she became. Humans had something called cookbooks. These books taught people how to prepare food. But some of these books seemed to be written by males. Were they learning how to prepare their mates for eating? She found recordings of human males talking about tasting their partners. They spoke about it with pleasure, as if it was something they enjoyed very much. One human male said his partner tasted better than candy. Zixala felt sick. On her home planet, eating another intelligent being was the worst crime possible. Anyone who did such a thing would be locked away forever. But for humans, it seemed normal. It seemed like something they were proud of. She decided she needed to see this behavior with her own eyes. The diplomatic station had areas where different species could interact. There was even a section designed for humans, with their preferred atmosphere and gravity. Zixala put on her environmental suit and headed to the human section. She had visited before during official meetings, but now she had a different purpose. She needed to observe human mating behavior. The human area was busy. There were about 50 humans living on the station while the 2 species worked out their alliance. Zixala found a good hiding spot behind some plants in their common area. She watched human couples walking together. They seemed happy. They laughed and touched each other gently. This confused her. If the males were going to eat the females, why did the females look so relaxed? Maybe humans were very good at hiding their true nature. A human couple sat down near her hiding spot. The male was tall with dark hair. The female was shorter with red hair. They were holding hands and talking quietly. "I'm so hungry," the female said. "Where should we go for dinner?" The male smiled. "How about that new restaurant on level 3? I heard they have amazing food." "Perfect," the female said. "I could eat anything right now." Zixala listened carefully. They were talking about eating, but in a casual way. Maybe this was how humans planned their cannibalistic activities. They made it sound normal and friendly. The couple got up and walked away. Zixala followed them at a safe distance. They went to a restaurant just as they had said. Through the window, she watched them sit at a table. A human server brought them plates of food. But the food was not what Zixala expected. It looked like vegetables and some kind of meat, but not human meat. They ate this food while talking and laughing. This confused her more. Were they eating regular food first? Was this part of some ritual? After they finished eating, they left the restaurant. Zixala continued following them. They went to the males' quarters. The door closed behind them. Zixala pressed her ear to the door. She could hear talking, but the words were too quiet to understand. Then she heard the female laugh. It was a happy sound, not the sound of someone in danger. An hour later, the door opened. Both humans came out. The female was alive and looked perfectly happy. She kissed the male goodbye and walked away. Zixala was more confused than ever. If the male had eaten the female, how was she still alive? How was she still walking and talking? Maybe humans had a different way of eating that did not kill the other person. Maybe they could regrow parts of their body. Some species could do that. Or maybe the real eating happened later during actual mating. Zixala decided she needed to find more evidence. She spent the rest of the day watching other human couples. They all behaved the same way. They would eat regular food together, then go to private quarters. Later, both would come out alive and happy. But the phrases in the human files were very clear. Males ate out females. They went down on them. They tasted them and devoured them. There had to be something she was missing. That night, Zixala sat in her quarters writing her report. She described what she had observed. She noted that the females survived the eating process, but that might just mean humans were very skilled at non-fatal consumption. She also noted that humans seemed to enjoy this cannibalistic behavior. Both males and females appeared happy about it. This suggested that their entire species had evolved to accept this practice. As she finished her report, Zixala felt a deep sadness. Humans seemed like nice beings in many ways. They were intelligent and creative. They had built amazing ships and technology, but if they really were cannibals, the Velthari could never trust them. She sent her report to Elder Morthak and went to sleep. Tomorrow she would continue her investigation. She needed to gather more proof before the High Council made their final decision about the human alliance. The fate of two species might depend on what she discovered next. The next morning, Zixala woke up with a plan. She needed better evidence of human cannibalistic behavior. Watching from a distance was not enough. She had to get closer to the humans and learn more about their eating habits. She put on her best disguise. The environmental suit made her look less alien, and she practiced walking like humans did. Her people moved more smoothly, but humans took heavier steps. She tried to copy their movement. The human section of the station had a large eating area called a cafeteria. Zixala decided to start her investigation there. If humans were cannibals, she might see signs of it in how they prepared and ate their food. When she entered the cafeteria, she was surprised by how normal everything looked. Humans sat at tables eating what appeared to be regular food. There were fruits, vegetables, and meats from animals. She saw no evidence of human flesh being served. Zixala found an empty table where she could observe without being noticed. She activated her recording device and started taking notes. A group of human males sat nearby. They were talking loudly about their romantic partners. "My girlfriend is amazing," one man said. "I could just eat her up." Zixala nearly dropped her recording device. There it was. Direct evidence. The human male wanted to consume his female partner. "I know what you mean," another male replied. "When I see my wife in the morning, she looks so good I want to devour her." Two males talking about eating their mates. Zixala wrote down every word. "My partner has the sweetest taste," a third male added. "I can never get enough." Zixala felt sick to her stomach. These humans were casually discussing cannibalism as if it was perfectly normal. They seemed proud of wanting to eat their females. She continued listening and recording. The evidence was building quickly. A human female approached her table. Zixala tensed, ready to run if needed. "Hi there," the female said with a smile. "I'm Sarah Chen. I work in the Cultural Exchange Department." "I don't think we've met." Zixala tried to stay calm. "I am studying human culture," she said carefully. "That's wonderful," Sarah said. "Mind if I sit? I love talking about human customs with other species." Before Zixala could refuse, Sarah sat down across from her. This was dangerous. Zixala was now sitting with a potential victim of human cannibalism. "What aspects of human culture interest you most?" Sarah asked. Zixala thought quickly. She needed to learn more without revealing her true purpose. "I'm curious about human Romantic relationships, Sarah's face lit up. Oh, that's a fascinating topic. Human romance is very complex. We have so many different ways to express love and affection. Yes, Zixala said carefully. I have read about males eating their partners, Sarah laughed. Oh, you mean when people say they want to eat someone up? That's just an expression. It means they find someone so adorable or attractive that they want to show extreme affection. Zixala stared at her. It is not literal eating? Of course not, Sarah said, still smiling. Though I guess it could sound confusing to other species. We have lots of food-related expressions for romance, like when someone takes the cake or is sweet as pie. But Sarah's explanation did not make sense to Zixala. She had read very specific descriptions in the human files. They were not talking about expressions. They were talking about actual tasting and consuming. What about eating out? Zixala asked. Sarah's cheeks turned slightly red. Well, that's a different kind of expression. It's more intimate, so it is real eating, Zixala pressed. No, Sarah said quickly. It's not about eating food at all. It's about physical intimacy between partners. I probably shouldn't explain the details here in public. This confused Zixala even more. Sarah was clearly hiding something. The human female was trying to protect the truth about her species' cannibalistic practices. I have to go, Sarah said, standing up. But it was nice meeting you. If you have more questions about human culture, feel free to ask me anytime. After Sarah left, Zixala sat alone processing what she had learned. The human female had tried to deny the cannibalism, but her embarrassed behavior suggested she was lying. She had even admitted that eating out was real, but intimate. Zixala decided she needed to investigate human food preparation more closely. If they were cannibals, they had to prepare their victims somewhere. She left the cafeteria and searched the human section for cooking areas. She found a large kitchen where human chefs prepared meals for the restaurant. Through a window, she watched them work. The head chef was a human male with gray hair. He was teaching younger humans how to cook. Zixala activated her recording device again. The key to any good dish is understanding your ingredients, the chef said. You need to know how to bring out the best flavors. He was talking about preparing food for eating. But what kind of food? When you're working with delicate ingredients, you have to be gentle, the chef continued. Take your time. Savor the process. Another chef, a young human male, asked a question. How do you know when something is ready? Experience, the older chef replied. You learn to read the signs. You can tell by the smell, the texture, the way it responds to your touch. Zixala wrote down everything. This sounded like they were discussing how to prepare living beings for consumption. The delicate ingredients could be human females. The talk about texture and response to touch was especially disturbing. My wife always says I'm the best cook she knows, the young chef said. Proudly, that's because you put love into your cooking, the older chef replied. When you truly care about what you're preparing, it always tastes better. Zixala felt more sick with each word. These human males were learning how to prepare their mates for eating. They spoke about it with such pride and affection. She continued watching for another hour. The chefs prepared many different dishes, but they all seemed to be regular animal meat and vegetables. This confused her again. If they were cannibals, where was the human meat? Maybe they prepared their actual victims in private areas. The public kitchen might only be for regular food to maintain their disguise. As she was leaving the kitchen area, Zixala overheard two human females talking. I'm so excited for tonight, one said. My boyfriend promised to cook for me. That's so romantic, the other replied. There's nothing better than a man who knows his way around the kitchen. I know. He's so good with his hands. Everything he makes just melts in my mouth. Zixala stopped walking. The female was talking about her male partner cooking for her. But based on what Zixala had learned, the male was probably preparing to cook the female herself. Even more disturbing, the female seemed excited about it. She was looking forward to being eaten by her mate. This suggested that human females had been conditioned to accept their fate. They had been trained to enjoy the process of being consumed. This was far worse than simple cannibalism. This was systematic psychological manipulation. Zixala hurried back to her quarters. She had enough evidence for today. The situation was even more serious than she had first thought. She spent the evening writing a detailed report. She described the conversations she had overheard, the cooking lessons she had witnessed, and the disturbing enthusiasm of the potential victims. She also noted that humans seemed to have developed an elaborate system to hide their cannibalistic nature. They used code words and expressions. They prepared victims in private areas. They had even trained their females to cooperate willingly. This level of organization suggested that cannibalism was not just accepted in human culture. It was the foundation of their entire society. Before sending her report, Zixala decided to add one more observation. Despite all the evidence she had gathered, she had still not seen any actual consumption of human flesh. Every human she had observed was still alive and healthy. This meant that humans were either very careful about when and where they practiced cannibalism, or they had developed methods that allowed victims to survive the process. Both possibilities were equally terrifying. Zixala sent her report to Elder Morthak and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow she would try to observe actual cannibalistic behavior. She needed definitive proof before the High Council made their decision about the human alliance. The evidence was mounting, but she needed to see the truth with her own eyes. Elder Morthak's emergency call woke Zixala before dawn. His face on the communication screen looked more serious than she had ever seen him. "Report to the High Council chamber immediately," he said. "Bring all your evidence about the humans." Zixala dressed quickly and gathered her files. As she hurried through the corridors of the diplomatic station, she felt nervous. The High Council only met for the most important decisions. Her reports about human cannibalism must have caused great concern. The council chamber was filled with the most important leaders of her people. 12 Elder Velthari sat in a circle, their purple robes flowing around them. In the center of the circle was a holographic display showing her research data. "Zixala," Elder Morthak spoke formally, "present your findings to the council." She stood in the center of the circle and activated her presentation. Images and recordings from her investigation appeared in the air around her. "Honored elders," she began, "my research has revealed disturbing truths about human mating practices. The evidence shows that human males regularly consume their female partners during intimate encounters." Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. Elder Vextani, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward. "You are certain of this claim?" "Yes, Elder," Zixala replied. "I have recorded conversations where human males openly discuss eating out their partners. They speak of tasting and devouring females with great pleasure." She played the recordings she had made in the cafeteria. The council listened with growing horror as human males talked about wanting to eat up and devour their girlfriends and wives. "This is barbaric," Elder Kylemoth whispered. "How can they speak so casually about consuming their own kind?" Zixala continued her presentation. "The evidence suggests this is not random violence. It appears to be an organized system. Human males learn cooking techniques that they use to prepare their victims. The females have been conditioned to accept and even enjoy this treatment." She showed the recordings from the kitchen, where the chef spoke about delicate ingredients and bringing out the best flavors. Furthermore, Zixala added, "Human females actively participate in their own consumption. I observed them expressing excitement about being cooked for by their male partners." The council members looked at each other with deep concern. Elder Zorvek, who managed diplomatic relations, spoke next. "If this is true, we cannot proceed with the alliance. We cannot trust a species that practices cannibalism as part of their normal social structure." "Agreed," said Elder Vextani, "but we must be certain. The consequences of breaking off relations will be severe for both species." Elder Morthak stood up. "I recommend we confront the humans directly. We should demand an explanation for these practices." "No," Elder Zorvek argued. "If we accuse them openly, they might become hostile. We should end the alliance talks quietly and remove our people from the station." "But what about the trade agreements?" Elder Kylemoth asked. "Our planets need the resources the humans offered. Without those materials, our colonies will struggle." "Better to struggle than to ally with cannibals," Elder Vextani replied firmly. The debate continued for hours. Some elders wanted to confront the humans immediately. Others preferred to quietly withdraw from the alliance. A few suggested they needed more evidence before making such a serious decision. Finally, Elder Vextani called for order. "We will vote. All in favor of immediately ending alliance negotiations with the humans?" 8 of the 12 elders raised their hands. "The decision is made," Elder Vextani announced. "We will begin withdrawal procedures immediately. Elder Zorvek, inform the human diplomats that we are reconsidering the alliance terms. Do not mention the real reason. What about our people still on the station? Elder Morthak asked. They will return home within the week, Elder Vextani replied. We cannot risk their safety around these creatures. As the council meeting ended, Zixala felt a mix of pride and sadness. She was proud that her investigation had protected her people from dangerous allies, but she was sad that the humans had turned out to be cannibals. They had seemed so interesting and advanced. Meanwhile, in the human section of the station, Captain Marcus Webb was having the worst day of his diplomatic career. The Velthari had suddenly become cold and distant. All scheduled meetings had been cancelled. The trade negotiations that had been going so well were now stalled. Captain Webb sat in his office with Sarah Chen, trying to understand what had gone wrong. They won't tell us anything specific, Sarah said, looking at her notes. Ambassador Zorvek just keeps saying they need to reconsider the terms of the alliance. But yesterday everything was fine, Captain Webb replied. What could have changed so quickly? I don't know. The only unusual thing was that conversation I had with the young Velthari researcher. She was asking strange questions about human romance and dating. Captain Webb looked up. What kind of questions? She seemed confused about expressions like eating someone up and eating out. I tried to explain that they were just figures of speech, but she kept pressing for details. You don't think... Captain Webb paused. Could she have misunderstood something about human culture? Sarah thought about it. It's possible. Some of our romantic expressions might sound strange to aliens who take everything literally. We need to find out what they think we do, Captain Webb said. If this is a misunderstanding, we might be able to fix it. They tried to contact Elder Zorvek, but the Velthari diplomat refused to meet with them. All official communication had been suspended pending their reconsideration. Back in the Velthari section, Zixala was packing her research equipment. She had been ordered to prepare for departure along with the rest of her people. Elder Morthak visited her quarters to discuss the transition. Your work has been valuable, he told her. The Council is grateful that you discovered the truth about human nature before we committed to a full alliance. I just wish the truth had been different, Zixala replied. Humans seem intelligent and creative. It is sad that they are also cannibals. Many dangerous species appear civilized on the surface, Elder Morthak said. Your thorough investigation prevented a serious mistake. As they spoke, neither of them noticed the small communication device that Zixala had left activated on her desk. The device was still connected to the station's translation network, and their conversation was being automatically recorded and translated into multiple languages, including Human Standard. In the station's central computer system, an automated alert triggered. Whenever the word cannibal appeared in diplomatic communications, the security system flagged it for immediate review. Within minutes, the recording of Zixala's conversation reached Captain Webb's office. He and Sarah listened to the translation with growing amazement. They think we're cannibals? Sarah said in disbelief. That explains everything, Captain Webb replied. The sudden coldness, the cancelled meetings, the withdrawal from negotiations. But how could they think that? What evidence could they possibly have? Captain Webb played back more of the recorded conversations between Zixala and Elder Morthak. They heard detailed descriptions of evidence including human males talking about eating out and devouring their partners. Sarah put her head in her hands. Oh no. This is all my fault. What do you mean? I talked to that researcher about human expressions. She asked about eating out, and I got embarrassed and didn't explain it properly. She must have thought I was confirming that we actually eat people. Captain Webb stood up quickly. We have to fix this. Right now. Before they leave the station. How? They won't meet with us. Then we'll have to make them listen, Captain Webb said, even if it means having the most awkward conversation in diplomatic history. The fate of the human Velthari alliance now depended on explaining some very uncomfortable facts about human intimacy. Captain Webb only hoped he could find the right words to prevent an interstellar incident based on a very embarrassing misunderstanding. Captain Webb knew he had to act fast. The Velthari were preparing to leave the station, and once they returned to their homeworld, the misunderstanding might become permanent. He needed to speak with someone from their delegation immediately. Sarah, you said you talked to a young Velthari researcher, he asked. Yes, her name was something like Zixala. She seemed curious about human culture, but now I realize she was investigating us. Can you find her? She might be willing to listen since she knows you. Sarah checked the station's directory. Her quarters are in section C7. But Captain, what are we going to tell her? How do you explain human intimacy to an alien who thinks we're cannibals? Captain Webb took a deep breath. Very carefully. And very honestly, the truth is always better than misunderstanding, no matter how awkward. They hurried to the Velthari section of the station. The corridors were busier than usual, with aliens packing equipment and preparing to leave. Several Velthari gave the humans suspicious looks as they passed. At Zixala's quarters, Sarah pressed the door chime. After a long moment, the door opened slightly. Zixala's large purple eyes peered out nervously. Sarah Chen, she said cautiously. I am busy packing. Please, Zixala, Sarah said. We need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I do not think so, Zixala replied. My investigation was very thorough. Captain Webb stepped forward. I'm Captain Marcus Webb, head of the human diplomatic mission. I believe you think humans are cannibals. That's not true, and I can prove it. Zixala's eyes widened. You know about my research? The station's security system recorded some of your conversations, Captain Webb explained. We know what you think we do to our females. You're wrong, but I understand why you reached that conclusion. Zixala looked around nervously. I should not speak with you. My elders said humans might become dangerous if confronted. We're not dangerous, Sarah said gently. We're just confused and embarrassed. Please give us 5 minutes to explain. After a long hesitation, Zixala opened the door wider. 5 minutes only. They entered her quarters, which were filled with packed research equipment. Charts and notes about human behavior covered every surface. Captain Webb looked at Zixala's research materials. He could see transcripts of conversations, photos of humans eating in restaurants, and detailed notes about cooking techniques. This is very thorough work, he said honestly. I can see why you reached the conclusions you did. But you misunderstood what our words mean. I do not think so, Zixala said firmly. I have recordings of human males saying they want to eat out and devour their females. The evidence is clear. Sarah sat down across from Zixala. Those phrases don't mean what you think they mean. In human language, we often use words about food to describe other things. What other things? Zixala asked suspiciously. Captain Webb cleared his throat. This is going to be very awkward to explain, but eating out is a human expression for physical intimacy between partners. It doesn't involve actual eating or food. Zixala stared at him. Physical intimacy? Yes, Sarah said, her cheeks turning red. When humans mate, there are different ways we show affection and give each other pleasure. Some of these ways involve using mouths on different parts of the body, but not for eating, Captain Webb added quickly. For pleasure. For showing love. Zixala looked confused. Your mouths touch other body parts? Why? Sarah struggled to find the right words. Because it feels good. It's a way to be close to someone you love. The touching stimulates nerve endings and creates pleasant sensations. And when we say we want to eat someone up or devour them, Captain Webb continued, we mean we find them so attractive that we want to kiss them all over. We want to show them lots of affection. Zixala was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. So when males say they want to taste their partners, they're talking about kissing and touching during intimate moments, Sarah explained. Humans have taste receptors in their mouths, so we can taste skin when we kiss. It's a pleasant experience. No actual consumption occurs? Zixala asked. None at all, Captain Webb confirmed. Both partners survive the experience completely healthy. In fact, they usually feel very happy afterward. Zixala looked at her research notes. But what about the cooking? I observed human males learning to prepare delicate ingredients and talking about bringing out flavors. Sarah almost laughed. That was probably just regular cooking. Humans eat animals and plants for nutrition. We also cook for our romantic partners as a way to show care and affection. When a human male cooks for his female partner, Captain Webb explained, he's demonstrating that he wants to take care of her. It's a loving gesture, not preparation for cannibalism. Zixala stood up and walked to her research charts. She studied them with new understanding. So when I observed couples going to restaurants together, they were just eating regular food and enjoying each other's company, Sarah said. And when I heard females saying they were excited to be cooked for by their partners, they were looking forward to a nice meal prepared by someone who cares about them, Captain Webb replied. Zixala sat down heavily in her chair. I have made a terrible mistake. It's not your fault, Sarah said kindly. Human language is very complicated. We use metaphors and expressions that can be confusing even to other humans sometimes. But I reported to the High Council that humans are cannibals, Zixala said quietly. They have decided to end the alliance because of my research. Captain Webb felt his stomach drop. Is there any way to correct this? Can you explain the misunderstanding to your leaders? I do not know, Zixala replied. The council was very disturbed by my findings. They may not believe that I was wrong. We have to try, Sarah said. Too much depends on this alliance. Both our species will benefit from working together. Zixala looked at the humans with new eyes. They seemed genuinely concerned about the situation. They had been patient and honest in explaining their customs, even though the topic was clearly embarrassing for them. There is one possibility, she said slowly. If I could demonstrate that I misunderstood human behavior, the council might reconsider. What kind of demonstration? Captain Webb asked. I would need to observe actual human intimate behavior, Zixala said, then quickly added, not directly, but perhaps through recordings or detailed explanations that prove no consumption occurs. Sarah and Captain Webb looked at each other. This was getting more awkward by the minute. That's very personal information, Sarah said carefully. Humans don't usually share intimate recordings with other species. I understand, Zixala said. But without proof, the council will not believe that I was wrong. They will think I am being deceived by clever human lies. Captain Webb thought about the situation. The alliance was worth billions of credits in trade and could prevent conflicts for generations. But convincing the Velthari would require sharing some very private information about human sexuality. What if we provided scientific documentation? He suggested. Medical texts that explain human reproductive behavior in clinical terms? That might work, Zixala said. If the documentation comes from your own scientists and doctors, the council would have to accept it as truth. I can gather those materials, Sarah said. We have extensive medical literature about human sexuality and reproduction. But we need to act quickly, Captain Webb added. How long before your people leave the station? Zixala checked her schedule. The transport ships arrive tomorrow morning. If I'm going to present new evidence to the council, it must be tonight. They had less than 24 hours to save an interstellar alliance. The task ahead would require delicate diplomacy, scientific documentation, and the most awkward presentation in galactic history. But it was their only chance to prevent a disastrous breakdown in human-Velthari relations. The next few hours were the most frantic of Captain Webb's career. While Sarah gathered medical documentation about human sexuality, he worked with the station's diplomatic staff to arrange an emergency meeting with the Velthari High Council. Elder Zorvek initially refused to meet with the humans. But when Zixala requested permission to present new evidence about her research, the council agreed to listen. You have 1 hour, Elder Zorvek told Captain Webb. After that, our ships depart and the alliance discussions are finished. Zixala spent the evening reviewing the human medical texts that Sarah had provided. The scientific descriptions of human reproductive behavior were very different from the evidence she had originally gathered. This is fascinating, she told Sarah, as they prepared for the presentation. Human mating is much more complex than I understood. You have emotional components that my species lacks. Every species is different, Sarah replied. That's what makes interspecies cooperation so valuable. We can learn from each other. When the time came for the presentation, the High Council chamber was tense. The 12 elders sat in their circle, looking stern and suspicious. Captain Webb and Sarah stood beside Zixala as she prepared to address her leaders. Honored elders, Zixala began, I must report a serious error in my previous research. Elder Vextani leaned forward. What kind of error? I misunderstood human language and behavior, Zixala said. Humans are not cannibals. My evidence was based on incorrect interpretation of their expressions and customs. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Elder Morthak looked confused. But your recordings clearly showed humans discussing eating their partners. Yes, but those discussions were not literal, Zixala explained. Humans use food-related words to describe romantic affection and intimate activities. When they say they want to eat someone up, they mean they want to show that person lots of love. She activated the holographic display and showed the council the human medical Documentation. These are scientific texts from human doctors and researchers, she continued. They describe actual human reproductive behavior in clinical detail. As you can see, no consumption of flesh occurs during human mating. Elder Kylemoth studied the medical diagrams. These documents appear authentic, but how do we know they are not deceptions created to hide the truth? Captain Webb stepped forward. Honored Elder, these texts come from our most respected medical institutions. They are used to train human doctors and researchers. We would gain nothing by falsifying scientific knowledge that our own people depend on. Furthermore, Sarah added, you can verify this information through direct observation. Watch human couples before and after intimate encounters. You will see that both partners remain healthy and unharmed. Elder Zorvek looked skeptical. If what you say is true, why do humans use such confusing language? Why describe romance in terms of eating? Human language evolved over thousands of years, Captain Webb explained. Many of our expressions are metaphorical. We compare strong emotions to physical sensations. When we say someone takes our breath away, we don't mean they literally remove our oxygen. Zixala added her own observations. I have now watched human couples more carefully. After intimate encounters, both partners appear happy and relaxed. They show affection toward each other. This would not occur if one had been harmed or partially consumed. Elder Vexitani was quiet for a long moment. This is a very serious accusation to retract, young Zixala. Are you certain that your new interpretation is correct? Yes, Elder, Zixala replied firmly. I allowed my unfamiliarity with human language to cloud my judgment. The evidence for cannibalism was never as strong as I believed. The council members looked at each other and began a hushed discussion in their native language. After several minutes, Elder Vextani called for order. We will consider this new information, she announced. But we require additional verification before making a final decision about the alliance. What kind of verification? Captain Webb asked. We want to observe human couples directly, Elder Morthak said. Not their intimate behavior, but their interactions before and after private time together. If they truly remain unharmed, this should be easy to demonstrate. Sarah nodded. We can arrange that. Several human couples on the station would be willing to participate in a cultural observation study. There is one more requirement, Elder Zorvek added. Zixala must personally vouch for her new findings. If she is wrong again, she will face serious consequences for misleading the council twice. Zixala straightened her shoulders. I accept that responsibility, Elder. I am confident in my corrected analysis. Over the next day, the verification process began. Human couples volunteered to be observed by Velthari researchers. The aliens watched as couples went on dates, returned to private quarters, and emerged later looking happy and healthy. The evidence was overwhelming. No human showed any signs of being harmed or partially consumed. In fact, they seemed more affectionate and content after their private time together. Elder Vextani called another council meeting to review the findings. The evidence supports Zixala's corrected analysis, she announced. Humans do not practice cannibalism. Their expressions about eating partners are metaphorical references to affection and intimacy. Furthermore, Elder Morthak added, this incident has taught us valuable lessons about interspecies communication. We must be more careful about literal interpretations of alien language. Elder Zorvek stood up. The council has decided to resume alliance negotiations with the humans. However, we will establish new protocols for cultural research to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future. Captain Webb felt a wave of relief. We're grateful for your understanding, honored elders. This experience has taught us valuable lessons as well. Yes, Sarah agreed. We need to be more aware of how our expressions might sound to other species. Clear communication is essential for successful cooperation. Elder Vextani looked at Zixala. Your mistake was serious, but your courage in correcting it was admirable. The council hereby appoints you as head of the new interspecies communication department. Your job will be to prevent future misunderstandings between our peoples. Zixala bowed deeply. I am honored by your trust, Elder. I will work to ensure that language barriers never again threaten peaceful relations. In the weeks that followed, the Human Velthari Alliance was formally established. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchange programs were created, and joint research projects began. Zixala's new department became one of the most important parts of the alliance structure. She worked with human linguists to create better translation protocols and cultural guides. Her department also helped other species avoid similar misunderstandings. The incident became known as the Great Cannibalism Confusion in diplomatic circles. While embarrassing for both species, it ultimately strengthened their relationship by forcing them to communicate more clearly and honestly. 6 months later, Zixala attended the first joint human-Velthari cultural celebration. She watched human couples dancing together, laughing and showing affection. It was hard to believe she had once thought these gentle beings were cannibals. Sarah Chen approached her during the celebration. "How are you settling into your new role?" "Very well," Zixala replied, "though I still feel embarrassed about my mistake." "Don't be," Sarah said warmly. "Your mistake led to better understanding between our species. Sometimes the biggest errors teach the most valuable lessons." "I have learned that assumption is dangerous," Zixala agreed. "Now I always ask for clarification when something seems strange about another culture." "That's wisdom that will serve both our peoples well," Sarah said. As the celebration continued around them, Zixala reflected on how close the two species had come to permanent conflict over a simple misunderstanding. The experience had taught her that even the most intelligent beings could make serious errors when dealing with unfamiliar cultures. But it had also shown her that honesty, patience, and willingness to admit mistakes could overcome almost any barrier to understanding. The Human-Velthari Alliance went on to become one of the most successful partnerships in galactic history. And at its foundation was a lesson learned through the most awkward diplomatic conversation ever recorded. Sometimes the best way to build trust is to have an embarrassing but honest discussion about the facts of life. Years later, when training new diplomatic researchers, Zixala would always tell them about her great mistake. She would remind them that understanding other species required not just observation, but also the courage to ask uncomfortable questions, and the wisdom to admit when you were wrong. The story became a legend in diplomatic circles, proving that even the most embarrassing misunderstandings could lead to lasting friendship between the stars.